In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at multiple severe weather events, as we've been saying for multiple days in a row, because we're in the springtime and these things are going to become a lot more common, obviously. We do have a big potential snowfall event in the Northeast coming up very, very soon. And no, that is not an April Fool's joke. It really is looking to potentially happen, which is quite shocking and quite unseasonable, but not unheard of. So let's just dive into things and take a look at what is in the upcoming pattern. And first things first, let's take it towards tomorrow afternoon on Easter Sunday here, March 31st. We do have some thunderstorm activity as well as some overall showers here, extending from portions of the plains through the Ohio Valley and into portions of the southern mid-Atlantic there. I'm going to go a little bit more into detail here with the Easter forecast than I typically would, so bear with me. But we do see lighter showers or more isolated thunderstorms here in eastern Texas and portions throughout Louisiana there. And then we have a bigger storm system back towards the west here, and this is going to be for a lot of the four corner states. The Southwest, like California and Nevada, and then some of the northern Rockies, like Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming here. So there is plenty of snowfall and rainfall, respectively, depending on your elevation or your proximity to the coast. That definitely all plays a role there. So that is going to determine whether you are experiencing snowfall or rainfall. Regardless, these three areas here are the areas I'm watching for potential precipitation. I will say that a lot of this here is not likely to impact you throughout the day. It's more of something that's going to hit everybody progressively over time and only last a couple of hours likely. There are some heavier areas like closer to the low here in Missouri and Illinois where I could see it being a little bit more persistent, but this should be lighter activity overall. Now let's move towards April 1st. Again, no April Fool's jokes here, but this will be the April 1st forecast. We do have a 1001 millibar low pressure center here. Very, very far stretching warm front all the way off the eastern seaboard here. So we expect a warm push to the north across a lot of these areas for that first day of April. We do have a little bit of an interesting jet stream pattern out west. It's still something like this for the entire United States, but we see this ridge is really going inverted, and so is this trough where it's kind of diving back towards the west. So this isn't really a true trough out west, and I expect this to cause a flatter ridge here in the east. I don't think this is going to be an aggressive, far-stretching ridge by any means. It's going to stay flat like that, and it's going to be easy for cold to actually make its way in. So by the time we're reaching Tuesday afternoon, which will be on April 2nd, we have a little bit more major severe weather ongoing. 994 here. Severe weather underneath here. I think I kind of glanced past it, but we do actually expect severe weather. The reason I missed it is because we looked at the afternoon. But by the evening here of Monday, we actually do currently have an enhanced risk for severe weather. And I can't put that entire thing on screen. But I do recommend you check out the Storm Prediction Center's forecast here for the day on Monday. And that's going to be April 1st into Tuesday, April 2nd. And we do see severe thunderstorms for portions of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri here, and even extending into Illinois and surrounding states. Definitely watching for a major severe weather event there. And even not too shabby there by Tuesday afternoon. 994 in Ohio, we have this kind of sweeping cold front back to the south and a warm front out ahead of it. So along the eastern seaboard, I would say that we have a pretty good chance of severe weather here. Currently, we have a 15% chance of severe weather for portions of the Mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley, and perhaps even the Northeast. I'll need to look at it again. But that translates roughly to at least a slight risk of severe weather that could go up over time. Usually they don't downgrade those risks. They like to kind of continually increase it over time. So they go a little bit conservative in the long range so that they can kind of continue to climb up with that forecast. And you very, very rarely see a regression in what they're predicting as far as the overall risk of severe weather. It does happen, of course, but it's not nearly as common as upgrades to those forecasts, so keep that in mind. But again, I want to take a moment to highly encourage you guys to take a look at the Storm Prediction Center's forecasts for all of the coming days, as there is some pretty active severe weather ongoing. Let's take a look at the day on Wednesday the 3rd, and we actually do get a pretty decent cool down here for a lot of the central and the eastern states. This low is currently located over kind of offshore of New Jersey. We have this cold front still just offshore of the southeast. And along this cold air moving in, we actually do have snowfall developing for a lot of the Great Lakes and into the northeast. As we keep going towards that evening, what we see is that a lot of that rain changes over to snow, and we see everywhere from northern Pennsylvania northward into New York and the rest of New England seeing moderate to heavy snowfall from a monster snowstorm, 983 millibar low pressure center offshore of uh, Cape Cod and Nantucket and all those places. We see a lot of just this strengthening low, very, very deepening low. We've seen some predictions in the 970s. This one looks like it's going to as well. And look at how it just kind of stalls. Okay, so this low is continuing to move offshore, and then it wants to just kind of really slowly meander around this area, almost kind of moving backwards at times. And we do see this from time to time, and it actually increases the amount of snowfall we end up seeing typically. So watch how this low over time doesn't move away. It actually starts moving back towards the coast and wants to just hang out, even strengthening down to a 976 millibar low pressure center by time we're taking a look at Thursday morning on April 4th. So continuing to intensify, continuing to stick nearby as well. And it doesn't really move out until Friday morning. So we see snowfall from Wednesday afternoon until Friday morning. So over 24 hours of snowfall potentially. I would say that this one has really, really strong potential to be a pretty major snowstorm, especially considering two facts. I mean, this isn't going to take a rocket scientist to figure out, but over 24 hours of snowfall. And because that low is so deep, we have a 980 to 970s as far as what millibars we're taking a look at. We're going to see very intense snowfall for spots in that storm. So again, intense snowfall for over 24 hours. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that this likely means feet of snowfall if we see this solution play out, which is just crazy for early April in my opinion. By the time I reach the afternoon of Friday, maybe even seeing some lingering snowfall showers, as that low is still pretty darn close. It's weakened down to a 993, but it is still not wanting to leave that East Coast area. Also, take a look at how much cold air we have. Be careful planting your plants. We're going to continue talking about gardening here a little bit on the channel. Be careful putting them outside. There is still a couple of bigger cool downs like this one that could bring those lows into the 40s or maybe even the 30s, which could damage some of those weaker and younger plants, of course. By the time we're reaching Saturday afternoon on April 6th, we see things much quieter in the east here, but look at this massive trough combined with a really, really big just snowstorm here, 994. And it actually kind of goes inverted where it starts heading back towards the northwest. Typically, these systems move from west to east. This one wants to move a little bit from east to west here as it goes north over that trough. Very, very interesting. And also during this time frame, let's look at the jet stream real quickly. We have this very anvil-shaped ridge over the central states, and these can be really, really intense when we see these. So maybe a really big warm up here for the central states coming up as we approach the end of the first week of April, with pretty big troughs on both coasts here. So along that kind of northwest area and that northeast region. We do see a major snowstorm, like I mentioned, for the Rockies due to this pretty strong low hanging out kind of on the western end of this ridge. Right next to the trough there, we get this heavy snowfall up the Canadian Rockies and down into the Four Corner States. Let's take a look at Sunday on the 7th here of April, and we have this 999 that was down here in Montana. It's moved to the north, so we've seen that happen. And then we have a little bit of an extending cold front underneath this. We could see some thunderstorm activity within that ridge. Again, unseasonably warm temperatures moving in with this ridge could provide just enough juice for these thunderstorms to get going here throughout the northern plains like North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and into Kansas. By the time we reach Monday afternoon on the 8th, we see a much quieter look overall for the states. That springtime warmth is really rapidly moving in. Honestly, to me, this is looking very, very spring-like. We see a lot of rainfall happening up in Canada, not snowfall. We see some snowfall here for the mountainous west, but it's pretty limited. And overall, the jet stream isn't having, we're not having major troughs and major ridges. We're just seeing overall mostly warmth in the United States. So by this kind of April 8th time frame, I see a true springtime pattern taking place right there. Looks very, very interesting. And it does appear, as we have 1,002 over Colorado, rising humidity and thunderstorms here from the Gulf of Mexico, that all of this could come together and create another severe weather event across the central states and then likely across the east as it moves across the nation. So more activity is certainly on the way. Let's go ahead and take a look at that GFS model. I want to take a look at this weekend, or better yet, next week's potential snowstorm. We do get this very strong low, 983, right near Cape Cod. This model in particular is a little bit further west and north with the low. We get more snowfall for the Ohio Valley and more of the interior northeastern states. But the European model is a little bit further south with it, and we got more snowfall over Boston, Connecticut, Rhode Island. We'll compare the two total snowfalls in a minute, but that low does very much so linger, just like the European model showed. And then eventually moving out by maybe even just Saturday or Sunday there, lasting numerous days, of course. Now, we do get a very major severe weather event after the 8th here on this model, 986. We have very vigorous rising storms out of the Gulf of Mexico. It looks very, very extreme. I want to take this back to the beginning because look, this is the 8th, right around when we looked at the European model. And again, low over Colorado, rising humid storms here over Texas and Oklahoma from the Gulf. Same ingredients here, but we get a longer range on the GFS. So as we continue through with it, we get the development of this really, really interesting low, mostly encompassing, an interesting look. There is no true cold front, warm front look to this one. Although I'm sure that there is some sort of cold front activity in here, warm front activity to the north, perhaps something like that, with warm air surging here, cold air trying to kind of flank below. Something like this might be the dynamic here. But it's hard to say for sure, and obviously things will change a lot. But regardless, we have this huge amount of warmth, huge amount of thunderstorms, could spell severe weather for the plains and some of the Midwest. They're around the 8th through 10th time frame, although it's very far out, of course. Heavier snowfall for Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. No surprise there, as this is still their wintertime pretty much. By Wednesday, we see some of this thunderstorm activity extend eastward through a lot of the Midwest and kind of Gulf states. Thursday, it's staying pretty stationary, and by Friday, Saturday timeframe, it is reaching the East Coast here, as you can see. That's going to be around the 12th, 13th timeframe, something like that. And as we move past that point, we do get another low pressure system in the plains and Midwest, so potentially, again, continuation of major activity through the midpoint of the month of April. Very, very interesting. Total precipitation on the European model, at least, there's still quite a bit over the west. The true area with the most here is going to be the Ohio Valley and upper Midwest into the mid-Atlantic and northeast there, as we have multiple storms moving through this area, one of which is that very major low that kind of hangs around here offshore of the northeast, and this helps to bring a lot of precipitation to these areas. And also over the course of the next 10 days, there is more precipitation than just that. So you add it all up, and yes, we're going to see a lot of activity. Total snowfall on the European model, we see a lot for that mountainous west area. No surprises, and honestly no changes since like December. So we've been seeing the same image here for like 3 or 4 months. But once we take a look at the northeast, this is where things get a little bit more up for debate. We see that there is quite a bit of accumulating snowfall in the northeast due to this April system. More in terms of like the 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4 inch amounts here for north central Pennsylvania and most of western New York. Same story with very far southern New England, like Connecticut into some of the valley there in Massachusetts. I don't know what that valley's actually called, but I know there is a valley right there. Kind of how I always remember is I believe that there's a river that kind of extends from Connecticut into Massachusetts, and that Vermont-New Hampshire border is that same river, I believe. So I always take that border downward, and that's how you find that valley. At least that's kind of how I've always pictured it. For a lot of Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts, we do see, again, those kind of like maybe 1 to 3 inch amounts. But it's once you get into the Adirondacks and Catskills here of New York, as well as the Green Mountains and the Berkshires of Vermont, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, as well as the White Mountains in through those mountainous areas of Maine, really the majority of the state of Maine. That's when it becomes clear that this is possibly going to be a 1 to 2 foot snowfall event. Again, heavy snowfall for over 24 hours, no brainer, right? Definitely a lot can change on the models, and that's the biggest variable here at play. But I think that if both models were, pretty close to being spot on, that, there's no stopping, feet of snowfall from occurring just because of the length of time and intensity of the storm. We would really need to see this storm look to travel much faster out of the area or be less intense to see a significant drop off in these snowfall totals. So we will continue to track this over the coming days. It's going to be very interesting. As promised, we'll take a look here at the Northeast on this GFS model as well. And here's the differences. So here's the European model, and then here's the GFS model, which you can see a pretty significant tick to the north here. With those heavier snowfall totals, it's much more in the interior northeastern area, and we see a whole lot less here over southern New England. Maybe not like that, but yeah, especially southern New England here seems to take the biggest hit here from this GFS's northern solution. I actually want to say that I feel like this GFS solution is a little bit more realistic just because it's a lot more interior and a little bit further northward. This just seems like a much more realistic outcome to me. But that's not to say that that's what's going to happen. The most realistic thing isn't always what happens. So just because I'm saying that doesn't make that the truth of the matter, of course. But I think that both of them are pretty close to each other, and this seems to be a likely a major snowstorm that we're going to be tracking. So be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.